Hi guys, I'm going to go ahead and go through some of the practice questions with you guys that I put on Google Classroom. All right, so I'm going to go through question number 1 first. It mentions to assume that a country's economy is in a short-run equilibrium and the actual unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate of unemployment. So first thing we need to think about, we say the actual unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate of unemployment. That means we have a situation where unemployment is going to be less than that 4 to 6% normal that we would see. All right, so first part says use a correctly labeled graph of long-run aggregate supply, short-run aggregate supply, and aggregate demand, and show each of the following: the current price level labeled PL1, current output level labeled Y1, and then it mentions to put the full employment output level labeled YF. All right, so we have to put long run in the model because it asks for it. It says long run aggregate supply curve. All right, so we're going to go price level, real GDP, long run aggregate supply. All right, so we've got that so far. Now it wants us to label the current price level and the current output level, and we know that unemployment is going to be less than where it would be at the natural rate. So we're going to have a situation where aggregate demand is a little bit higher than it normally would be. All right, so here is our short run aggregate supply curve, okay? And then here is aggregate demand, all right? So in that situation, we can see, okay, right, that extra output that's being generated, okay? So we need to label that Y1 like it asks, and then PL1 like it's asked, right? And then it also mentions for part 2 there, the full employment output level labeled YF. So that's right here. There's our full employment output level. All right, so that's part A of the question. Part B then says, what open market operation can the country's central bank use to move the economy toward its long-run equilibrium? So we have a situation where we have a little bit of short-run inflation, right? Because our output is beyond where it would be at full employment. And so we need to think about what open market operation would tame inflation. So we know open market operations means buying and selling bonds. So in this case, we're trying to tame inflation. All right, so we want to sell bonds. All right, we know that selling bonds will decrease the money supply. It'll raise interest rates. It'll decrease aggregate demand, and we'll get the economy back towards its long-run equilibrium. Okay, so for part B, all right, we want to be selling bonds. All right, now for part C, it says use a correctly labeled money market graph to show how the country's central bank action can move the economy towards long-run equilibrium and how this affects the nominal rate of interest. So now we need to draw a graph of the money market. Okay, remember money market's where we go to show the impact of a central bank's monetary policy. All right, so for part C now, right, we're showing the money market, so it's nominal interest rate, the quantity of money. Remember, the money supply is always vertical. It's always vertical. So we've got money supply, we got money demand, all right, we got Q, and then we got a little lowercase n for the nominal interest rate. All right, and so we know that we're selling bonds based on what we answered in part B. So if we sell bonds, that decreases the money supply. So we're going to have a leftward shift. And we can see that the impact on the nominal rate of interest is an increase. All right, the nominal rate of interest in the short run should increase in that particular situation. All right, for part D now, it says based on the interest rate change from part C, which will each of the following increase, decrease, or remain the same in the short run? All right, real output and explain, and then the natural rate of unemployment. Real output now should decrease because you have higher interest rates. All right, you're going to see less aggregate demand as a result, which means we should see less real output now in the short run. The natural rate of unemployment is not going to change. Remember, that's a long run average, so it's not going to change. It's going to remain the same. Okay, and then for the last part, part E, assume instead the central bank does not pursue the monetary policy action from part B, and there was no other government intervention. All right, so think about that for a second. No intervention at all. No money supply issues, no monetary policy issues, no government interaction, all right, nothing. All right, so that means we should be thinking classical view, long run, right? What happens if we just leave everything alone? Will each of the following increase, decrease, or remain the same in the long run? the short run aggregate supply curve and explain, and then employment. Okay, so let's look at that. Assume that the bank does nothing. So we're going to go back over here, right? We're going to assume the central bank does nothing and there's no other government intervention. Remember, in the long run, we have this idea of flexible prices and flexible wages, and the economy will fix itself. So if we're in a short run equilibrium right here, the only way that we can get back to a long run equilibrium is here. So short run aggregate supply would have to decrease. Okay, short run aggregate supply would decrease. All right. Why is short run aggregate supply decreasing? Costs have caught up, right? Production costs, wages, things like that have caught up to businesses. There's no longer that profit effect. All right, costs have caught up to them, so they're going to cut back on production here in the short run. That's going to take us back to our new long run equilibrium. Okay, employment. All right, employment's going to actually decrease. We can see that here. If output is decreasing, employment should actually decrease a little bit too. All right, it's taking us back to, all right, the natural rate of unemployment. Okay, don't get confused there because it's asking you what happens with employment, not what happens with unemployment. All right, so the amount of people working actually in this situation, now that we've adjusted back, actually will decrease. Okay, hope that helps. Now I'm going to tell my son to stop recording. Stop recording.